Dennis Whitaker was the kind of man people trusted without needing to ask why. In Willow Glen, a town where handshakes still meant something, Dennis's forge stood as a symbol of tradition, strength, and quiet dignity. He inherited the blacksmith shop from his father, just as his father had from his own, and every tool in that place told a story. Folks came not only for horseshoes or handcrafted knives, but for conversation, advice, or just a moment of calm in a noisy world. Dennis was up before dawn each day, his hands already coated in ash and effort before the rest of the town stirred. He didn't crave wealth or attention. He only wanted to build, to fix, and to serve. Kids waved when they passed his shop. Elderly neighbors brought him pies and thanks. And every Sunday, he set out folding chairs in the yard and grilled ribs for anyone who stopped by. Life was simple but full. To Dennis, his work wasn't just a job. It was a legacy of honest labor and unspoken love. He forged more than steel in that shop. He forged trust. And everyone in Willow Glen knew, if Dennis made it, you could count on it to last. Ava Whitaker once walked through the art galleries of Boston in heels that clicked with confidence, her world filled with sculpture, color, and whispered debates about brushstroke technique. Back then, she was vibrant, sharp, witty, endlessly curious. But the woman who now stood in Willow Glen's quiet kitchen felt like a faded sketch of that self. The town had its charms, yes, porch swings, warm pie, people who remembered your name, but it also came with stillness that turned stifling. The silence between Ava and Dennis had grown louder over the years. He loved his forge, his fire, and his daily rhythm. She craved stimulation, surprise, the electricity of possibility. And though Dennis was kind, steadfast, and decent to the core, Ava couldn't shake the growing ache in her chest, the longing to feel seen again. When Dennis spoke about steel and heat and hammer strokes, she nodded, but her eyes drifted to the windows, watching the wind stir the branches and wondering what else lay beyond this tiny town. She told herself it was selfish to want more. After all, Dennis had never hurt her. But self-pity crept in like water through a cracked foundation. Every wrinkle felt unfair, every gray hair a punishment for choosing a quiet life too soon. Her old friends posted pictures of Paris and Rome. She baked muffins. One evening, standing at the mirror and adjusting her blouse for a church potluck, Ava whispered to her reflection, "Is this it?" The mirror didn't answer, but her heart already knew. Jealousy didn't arrive in Ava's heart like a storm. It crept in quietly, like smoke under a door. It began with Ivy, young, bright-eyed, and eager to learn. She had joined Dennis's forge as an apprentice a few months ago. At first, Ava thought little of it. But over time, she noticed how Ivy hung on Dennis's every word, how she laughed at his quiet jokes, how her eyes sparkled when he explained the art of tempering steel. Worse, Ava noticed how he smiled back, softly, with that rare warmth he used to give only her. She knew there was nothing improper between them, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that Ivy was young and full of fire, and Ava felt like a wick that had long since burned out. Jealousy turned everyday moments into sharpened glass. A smudge on Dennis's collar became Ivy's lipstick in Ava's mind. A late evening at the shop became a whispered rendezvous. Ava began to question everything, not just Dennis's loyalty, but her own worth. She started wearing perfume again, curling her hair with trembling hands, hoping he'd notice. He didn't. One morning, Ava stood in the doorway of the forge, watching them work side by side, the clang of metal echoing like a heartbeat. Ivy smiled, brushing soot from Dennis's sleeve, and Ava felt something rupture inside her. It wasn't rage, it was the bitter ache of being quietly replaced. She turned away without a word, swallowed by a jealousy that didn't scream, but bled slow and silent. Vincent Hale arrived in Willow Glen like a ripple through still water, smooth, confident, and impossible to ignore. He wasn't from around here, and he made no effort to blend in. His tailored suits, glinting cufflinks, and vintage car all whispered of a world far removed from the dirt roads and pickup trucks of his quiet town. He opened a real estate office in the old Grayson building and painted the front door black with brass trim, like a portal to something slick and sophisticated. When Vincent met Ava, it wasn't an explosion, it was a slow ignition. He saw something in her that no one else had looked for in years. "You're too polished for this dusty place," he told her one evening, handing her a glass of wine at a community fundraiser. She laughed, but the compliment settled deep. Vincent spoke her language. Art, cities, the thrill of ambition. He knew what gallery she missed, which museums in Boston still haunted her dreams. And most dangerously, he listened. Ava found herself opening up, first about her frustrations, then about Dennis, and finally about the emptiness that clung to her like a second skin. Vincent didn't push. He let her inch closer, his attention patient and strategic. His words were velvet. "You gave up too much to be loved so little," he murmured once, brushing a loose hair from her cheek. In that moment, something fractured inside Ava. Vincent wasn't just temptation. He was the echo of the woman she used to be, calling her back to life. The affair began like a stolen breath, delicate, hesitant, wrapped in silk-thin excuses. Ava told herself it was harmless at first, just conversation, just companionship. But each meeting with Vincent left her flushed, her mind buzzing with a tension she hadn't tasted in years. Soon, whispers turned into touches, and glances became promises. They met in quiet places, his office after hours, the edge of the lake at twilight, a hotel in the next county where no one would know their names. Vincent was indulgent, always knowing what to say to pull her deeper. He kissed her like he was rewriting the story of her life, framing her not as a wife fading in the background, but as a woman desired, chosen. Ava tried to carry on at home as if nothing had changed, but guilt was a restless ghost. Dennis, ever devoted, never asked questions. That only made it worse. She would lie awake at night beside him, skin still humming from Vincent's hands, wondering if she had become a stranger to herself. Yet with every stolen encounter, Ava also felt more alive, sharper, more radiant. Vincent lit a fire she thought had long gone cold. What she didn't realize was that this fire wasn't warming her. It was consuming her. With every lie, every hidden text, every lipstick-stained collar stuffed in the laundry. Ava wasn't just cheating on her husband. She was chiseling away at the foundation of everything she once held dear. And once the cracks spread, nothing would stay standing. The moment Ava filed the restraining order, the tide turned. Vincent stood beside her at the courthouse steps, his hand lightly on her back. A gesture that seemed protective to outsiders, but controlling to those who knew better. Her claims were rehearsed. Emotional cruelty, economic control, veiled threats. They were lies, dressed in just enough truth to sting. Dennis didn't fight back, not at first. When the papers were delivered to his forge, he read them in silence, his hands covered in soot. The lines of disbelief etched deep into his face. The accusations spread fast. Willow Glen was a town where secrets never stayed secret, but gossip moved with the speed of wildfire. Some neighbors were shocked. Others were suspicious. But Dennis, always a man of calm steadiness, didn't lash out. Instead, he quietly packed a bag, left his home, and sought refuge at the edge of town with an old friend. What Ava didn't realize was that in trying to destroy Dennis, she was chiseling at her own name. People who'd known her smile now turned away. Shopkeepers who once asked about her garden now serve her last. But Ava clung to Vincent, believing the worst was behind her. "You're doing the right thing," he'd whisper. "You're claiming your life." And maybe that lie was the cruelest of all, because behind her eyes, the shadows grew. And in Dennis's silence, a storm was building, not of rage, but of truth waiting to strike with devastating precision. At first, Ava thought the town's silence was temporary, a cold shoulder that would thaw once the dust settled. But Willow Glen had a long memory and a deeper sense of justice than she anticipated. The whispers didn't die. They sharpened. Smiles turned to tight-lipped stares. Her once inviting coffee shop visits ended with baristas refusing to take her order. Children she once babysat crossed the street to avoid her. The looks weren't loud, but they screamed. Even the church, her refuge, suddenly ran out of room when she tried to join the women's Bible circle. Her name became shorthand for betrayal, muttered behind cupped hands and over backyard fences. And Vincent? He began to fray. His office was vandalized one night. Files scattered, a dead possum left on the reception desk with a note. "We know." His charm faltered, his temper flared. Ava tried to stand proud, head high, floral dresses fluttering defiantly through town square. But the mirrors betrayed her, eyes puffy from restless nights, lips quivering after each forced smile. The final blow came at the beauty salon. Wanting a change, she asked to go blonde. The stylist nodded sweetly, but the bleach burned. By the end, Ava's once lush hair fell out in clumps. leaving her with a jagged, uneven bob. The mirror reflected something almost cruel, the outline of a woman who had bet everything and lost. No warmth, no legacy, no friends. Just a name spoken like a warning, in a town that had already turned the page without her. Desperation makes fools of even the cunning, and Ava's final gamble was born not from strategy, but from rage. She could feel the walls closing in, social exile, her children's icy silence, Vincent's growing resentment, all of it tightening like a noose. So when she told Vincent they needed to finish it, she wasn't whispering, she was spitting fire. Her plan was simple and savage. Destroy the forge, Dennis's legacy, his livelihood, and whatever remained of his good name. If we can't shame him, we'll erase him, she said with chilling calm. Vincent hesitated, his nerves fraying, but Ava's fury was unrelenting. She packed the gas can in the trunk herself, wrapped the pistol in an old scarf, and insisted they go before dawn. The air was heavy that morning, too still, as if the town itself was holding its breath. But what Ava didn't know was that Dennis had been watching. He had friends in quiet places, loyal townsfolk who saw more than they said. And when she crept toward the back door of the forge, weapon in hand, the flashing red and blue lights split the darkness. Drop it, a voice boomed. Ava froze, wide-eyed. Vincent panicked, grabbing at her arm, begging her to run. But she wouldn't. Her pride had grown fangs, and her heart was drowning in its own poison. The gun went off. When it was over, 2 bodies bled into the dust. The town exhaled, and Dennis, untouched and unshaken, watched on rise over ashes he hadn't lit. The trial was more than a legal proceeding. It was a reckoning. Ava stood before the court, her once confident voice now laced with tremors, telling tales of emotional abuse and quiet suffering. Her lawyer painted Dennis as cold, unyielding, and silently cruel. But when the judge called forward character witnesses, the tide shifted like a storm front. One by one, townspeople stood for Dennis. Men who he had helped repair tools for free, mothers he had sheltered during storms, elders he visited without being asked. Then came the final blow. Noah and Elsie, Dennis's niece and nephew, took the stand with steel in their voices. They spoke of love, not harm, of nights Dennis spent helping them with schoolwork, cooking dinner when their parents were away, and gently guiding them through the grief of losing their father. They revealed Ava's affair, her scheming, her plans whispered behind closed doors. When Ava tried to interject, the judge silenced her. Vincent was gone. The town had already made up its mind. And now so did the law. The restraining order was dismissed. Dennis was cleared of all allegations. Outside the courthouse, Ava erupted, screaming at Noah, at Elsie, at the onlookers who watched with cool detachment. Police gently ushered her away as Dennis walked quietly to his truck, the crisp air brushing against his face like freedom. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. But as he drove home, the gravel humming beneath his tires, he knew the truth had finally spoken. It had roared louder than any lie ever could. Willow Glen did not weep for Ava. The day after her death, the town exhaled, soft, steady, like the easing of a long-held breath. No flags flew at half-mast. No flowers were laid. Her name was absent from church bulletins and coffee shop chatter. Life returned to rhythm, and in that rhythm, Dennis found quiet peace. The forge reopened at dawn, its windows glowing gold against the cool morning mist. Customers trickled in not just for knives or horseshoes, but for something steadier. Presents. Dennis didn't speak much, but his eyes had softened, as if the fire inside him had been tempered into something stronger. That evening, he returned home. The same one Ava once ruled like a stage. Now, it was stripped bare of tension, of perfume and secrets. He whistled, sharp and familiar, and from the garden came Mercy, the one-eyed shepherd pup he'd rescued from the edge of the county line. She bounded toward him with joyous clumsiness, crashing into his legs, tongue wagging, tail spinning like a pinwheel. Dennis knelt, burying his fingers into her fur. "Good girl," he whispered. "Real good girl." He lit the porch lantern and sat in his usual chair, sipping tea as the sun dipped low. The light fell soft over his anvil in the distance, and the wind carried the scent of magnolia. Ava and her chaos were buried deep, both in the ground and in memory. And Dennis, scarred but unbroken, lived on, not in bitterness, but in peace earned the hardest way, by surviving. In today's world, where temptation and validation are just a click away, It's easy to lose sight of the quiet strength that comes from loyalty, patience, and truth. This story reminds us that real character isn't built in loud moments, but in how we choose to stand during quiet storms. Don't let jealousy or self-pity lead you to burn the very bridges that held you steady. Before chasing glitter, ask yourself what truly shines. Protect what's real, speak honestly, and never underestimate the power of dignity in the face of betrayal. It's what separates the broken from the unbreakable.